Ever felt something strangely specific but unnamed? Those moments aren't glitches. They're shared, deeply human emotions shaped by self-awareness and modern life. Here are 8 of them, what triggers them, and the hidden names they carry. Aponemia. You're stuck in traffic on a Tuesday morning, drinking terrible coffee and looking at the brake lights ahead of you. Out of nowhere, an exhausting thought hits you. I never actually asked to be here doing this. This sudden, unsettling awareness that you never chose to be born in the first place is known as aponemia. Most of the time, your brain operates in pure survival mode. It keeps you laser-focused on immediate tasks, paying bills, eating dinner, and making sure you don't mess up. But when your mind finally gets quiet, a background network in your brain takes over. You suddenly realize you were dropped into a physical body without ever signing a contract. This realization can make you feel incredibly tired, but strangely, it can also feel like a huge relief. When you realize you're playing a game you were forced to join, the daily pressure drops. It feels exactly like waking up in a moving car and just deciding to look out the window and enjoy the ride. Redesis. You're having coffee with a younger coworker who asks for career advice. You start giving them the exact blueprint of what worked for you. But suddenly, halfway through your sentence, you feel like a complete fraud. That specific, uneasy feeling of giving someone advice while knowing your lives are shaped by completely different circumstances actually has a name. It's called Redesis. Empathy is basically a mental projection system. When you give advice, your mind pulls up your own past and pastes it directly onto their life. But the logical part of your brain quickly flags an error. It realizes you grew up in a different economy, different luck, and a completely different safety net. So you naturally start backpedaling with disclaimers like, "That's just what I did." You aren't just trying to be humble. Your mind recognizes that giving rigid life advice is basically handing someone a map to a city that doesn't exist anymore. Énouement. You're sitting in the living room of an apartment you finally own or holding your first child. You remember how terrified and lost you felt 5 years ago, crying on your bedroom floor because you thought your life was ruined? If you've ever felt the bittersweet ache of finally arriving in the future, knowing how things turned out but being completely unable to tell your past self, you've experienced Énouement. Your brain encodes emotional memories deeply. When you look back at a hard time, your body can still faintly feel the panic of your younger self. Because we are completely obsessed with resolving open loops, your mind desperately wants to send a comforting signal backward in time to say, "Don't worry, we make it." But physics won't let it, so you're left holding this heavy, unresolvable affection for who you used to be. You aren't sad about where you are. You're just mourning the fact that the person who needed the good news most will never get to hear it. Gobo. You just walked out of an incredible movie or spent the afternoon wandering through an art museum. When you step outside, the world suddenly looks completely different. The way the sunlight hits a dirty puddle or the sound of a distant siren suddenly feels deeply cinematic. People call this feeling Gobo, the sense that after a day filled with art or beauty, the whole ordinary world suddenly seems wildly meaningful. This happens because art changes the way you see things. When you watch a brilliant film, your eyes are actively trained to hunt for framing and hidden meaning. When you step back into reality, that mental filter doesn't just switch off. Your brain is still in art mode, finding beauty in random, mundane objects you would normally walk right past. For a few hours, you walk a little slower. The world feels rich and deeply intentional. It feels exactly like wearing a pair of magic glasses before your brain eventually adjusts back to its everyday baseline. Starlorn. You're camping out in the woods, miles away from city lights, and you look up at a perfectly clear night sky. Instead of feeling peaceful, your stomach drops, and you feel incredibly small and isolated. That cosmic, crushing loneliness you feel while looking up at the universe, suddenly realizing how vast and empty it is, goes by the name Starlorn. We evolved to understand physical space by walking and socializing. You completely understand what a mile feels like, or what it feels like to be across the room from someone, but you lack the mental hardware to process billions of light years of empty space. When your mind tries to calculate the sheer scale of the galaxy, it fails. To protect your sanity, it translates that failure into a sharp feeling of vulnerability. You might pull your jacket tighter and suddenly want to go back inside where the walls make sense. It feels like standing on the edge of a bottomless ocean, realizing you're just a speck of dust on a floating rock. Cullaways. You're trying to remember what you did on a random Thursday just 3 weeks ago. You try to picture the shirt you wore, and your mind comes up completely empty. Just a blank space. This quiet, slightly terrifying awareness that your brain is constantly erasing your memories without you even noticing it is called Cullaways. Your memory is a highly efficient machine with limited storage space. Every single night while you sleep, it runs a background cleanup process. It literally deletes the drive to work, the boring lunch you ate, and the small talk in the elevator, just so you have enough room to learn new things the next day. When you actually stop and realize this is happening, it feels deeply unsettling. You realize that out of the thousands of days you've been alive, you really only get to keep a tiny fraction of them. It feels like there's an invisible thief quietly stealing pieces of your past while you aren't looking. Zielschmerz. You've talked for years about writing a novel or launching a business. You finally get a completely free weekend to actually start. But the second you sit at the desk, a heavy wave of dread washes over you, and you suddenly want to clean your entire house instead. There's actually a term for this. Zielschmerz. It's the deep fear of finally pursuing a lifelong dream and exposing your true abilities to reality. Your brain does this to protect your ego. As long as your dream stays safely inside your head, it's completely flawless. In your imagination, you're already a massive success. But the absolute second you start typing or building, you have to face your actual limitations. Your mind treats that potential failure as a severe threat to your identity. This is the exact reason you procrastinate on the things that actually matter to you. You aren't lazy. You're just terrified of breaking the perfect illusion, like refusing to open a gift because you'd rather imagine what might be inside. Proluctance. You get a text message from someone you've been dying to hear from, or you finally receive a package you ordered weeks ago. But instead of opening it right away, you deliberately set it on the counter and wait an hour. This incredibly strange urge to postpone something important or beautiful, even though you've been looking forward to it, is known as proluctance. This mostly comes down to how your reward system works. The feel-good chemicals in your brain aren't actually about the reward itself. They are about the intense anticipation of the reward. When you see that unread message, your excitement levels peak. Your mind knows that the exact second you read it, the mystery dies, and the chemical rush drops off. So, you actively stretch the moment out. You let the package sit on the table all day. You're trying to keep the electric feeling of excitement alive for just a little bit longer. It feels exactly like pausing your favorite song right before the best part plays. When you step back and look at these moments, the truth is clear. Your internal world isn't broken, and your weirdest thoughts aren't glitches. You are not alone. Every strange feeling you couldn't quite explain has already been felt, understood, and finally named.